Hello there everyone and welcome back to the GSL-English podcast. My name is Gideon and this is a podcast for all learners of English to practice and improve in a relaxed and a natural way. And that is exactly what we are going to do today because this is the December Natter. So if you are a returning viewer or listener on YouTube and Spotify, you all know that once a month we have these good old chit-chat episodes where I just talk about random things, observations or experiences I've had, really just to give you the opportunity to listen to authentic British English, come away with some new words, new expressions, and just a chance for you to relax, unwind, and just practice your English listening skills. So I hope you're doing well. If you are new here, please don't forget to subscribe, give this video a like, introduce yourself in the comments. I will get back to as many of you as possible. And just so you know, I post episodes like this every Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning. So you've got nothing to lose. But before we get into our topics for discussion today, because this is the December Natter, we're at the end of the year, I do encourage you to grab a cup of tea. Grab a cup of coffee, make some beans on toast, get the roast in the oven and just enjoy the English language. You know, hopefully this is a chance for you just to unwind a little bit, and just practice your listening skills. So last Monday I went out with my mother and had a great time. It was nice spending some time with Mum. We don't get to see, well, we do see a lot of each other, but spending that quality time together, we don't get to do as much as we used to, of course, because life goes on, get busier, get older, things get in the way. So we booked to go and see Hans Zimmer together about a year in advance, which really blew my mind how quickly that year goes. Isn't it interesting that when you book something a year in advance, you think, oh, we'll never get to that. That's miles off. But before you know it, it's come round. So yeah, that was a real eye-opener of how quickly a year goes. But we thought, we're just going to book it in. Just so you know, I do see my mum in between that time. It's not been a year since I saw her, but just that quality time together, just us two. So we went out for a bite to eat. We had a good catch-up, put the worlds to rights, just, really... just caught up on so many things. It was really, really nice. I really treasured that evening. Had a good dinner together. And we went to see Hans Zimmer. Now, we're going to talk about that experience in the moment, which I did touch on it last week. And actually, one of your comments said that you went to see Hans Zimmer, I think, in Prague, and you loved it as well. So, yeah, amazing, wasn't it? He is playing next year. I think he's doing another tour. If you're into that kind of thing, which we're going to elaborate on in a moment, I highly encourage you to get tickets. You will not regret it. So actually, just before we do get into the whole chat, at the end of this episode, I'm going to try something a little bit different. So I'm going to ask you 5 comprehension questions. Okay. It was a suggestion that a couple of you put forward, and I thought that's a really good idea. So at the end of this episode, I'm just going to ask you 5 questions just to see how much you understood and for you to kind of gauge, how much you're getting or what areas you need to work on. So just a little heads up there. That's coming at the end of the podcast. So, went to see Hans Zimmer at the London entertainment leisure venue that is called the O2. You might well have been there. And if you've looked at any pictures of London across the Thames, you'll be very familiar with the O2. It's a big venue in Greenwich, in southeast London. Now, it was originally called the Millennium Dome, which opened on the 1st of January, the year 2000. And the idea was that when it first opened, it was to celebrate the new millennium. So I think I was 10. No, I would have been 9 actually. I remember going there on a school trip, going to the Millennium Dome in the year 2000. It was really exciting. And it was more of like an educational venue. But in 2007, it was renamed the O2 after the mobile phone company O2, very popular here in England. So the main arena where you go see concerts and shows and sports events, they do all sorts there: wrestling, tennis, concerts, exhibitions. It holds about 20,000 people, and I think it's one of the largest indoor arenas in Europe. Loads of famous people have played there: Beyonce, Adele, Ed Sheeran, I think Taylor Swift with her Reputation tour. Any Swifties out there? Oh yeah, Reputation tour was there. They've all performed there. And also inside the O2, there's restaurants, bars, cinemas, shops. And there's also some smaller music venues for not as big artists. So if you are in London, particularly in the southeast, you're going to Greenwich, I'd recommend, if you can get tickets to an event you want to go to, definitely go. But for the shops and the restaurants, I wouldn't say it's massively worth going to out of your way to. But if it's on the way and you're looking for something to do and you're not going to an event, maybe check it out. But if you are going to an event there, incredible place to go. They've got everything you need. You know, it's kind of famous for that like tent-shaped roof. And it's got those 12 masts that stick out of it, which actually I found out. So you kind of got that Millennium Dome shape, and you've got the 12 masts that stick out of it. Actually, I'll insert a picture somewhere around here. Those 12 masts represents the months of the year. So that's the idea behind it. And you can actually climb over the roof if you're into that kind of thing. I think it's called Up at the O2. So you have to book it far in advance. Advance. Sound like Sean Connery there. Far in advance. I must say, I think that was a brilliant Sean Connery impression. That's a new thing to add to my repertoire. So O2, great venue. But we're talking about Hans Zimmer. So he's who I went to see there with my mum. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of a backstory on Hans Zimmer. You might not be very familiar, or you might be a big fan, but I would say that all of us, knowingly or not, have heard his music, because he is one of the most famous film composers in the world. So he was born in Germany in 1957, and he writes music for films, and this is what we call a film composer. So somebody that writes music for films is called a film composer. And Hans Zimmer is considered probably one of the most influential, along with the likes of John Williams, who did Star Wars and things like that. He's had such a strong effect on how film music sounds today. And he's best known for writing powerful, atmospheric music that creates mood, feeling, excitement, fear or sadness, anxiety. He's done incredible things. But one special thing that I realised, particularly when seeing Hans Zimmer live, is that he creates these orchestral pieces, but with electronic sounds. That's hard to explain. I was honestly putting this into words for so long. It's so hard to explain what he does and the sound that he creates without you seeing it yourself. So I'm not going to go into it too much. It is just an incredible experience. I've never heard anything like it. You've got violins, cellos, trumpets, synthesizers, computers creating this bass that goes along with the beauty of an instrument like the violin. And apparently at first it was unusual. It took people a lot of getting used to, but now it really defines a lot of the greatest films we know. And actually he began his career in the UK. So although he's from Germany, he began in the UK, and he wrote music for adverts, films, television adverts, pop music. But he really became famous in 1988 with the film Rain Man, which I think is Tom Cruise and Robert De Niro. I might be off with that. Is it? Please let me know in the comments. Is Rain Man Tom Cruise and Robert De Niro? I'm pretty sure it is. But he got his first Oscar nomination from then. But since then, he's the genius behind music in Lion King, Gladiator, Pirates of the Caribbean, Batman the Dark Knight, Inception, Interstellar, and Dune. But one of the coolest things about seeing Hans Zimmer live is basically what he does is he creates soundscapes from movies, and you get taken to the film for like 10 minutes, and then he'll move on to another film. But one thing that I wasn't expecting was when he did Gladiator. Actually, if you're going to see Hans Zimmer, don't listen now because this might spoil it. Come back later. He brought out the original singer from the film Gladiator. When he did a section for Dune, if you've seen Dune, you'll know it's got that incredible vocal singing throughout it. He brought out the girl that sang that. In The Lion King, he brought out the original singer from the main theme tune of The Lion King. And it was just an incredible moment. And getting to experience that with my mum. The drums, the percussion, the deep bass sounds, the power, the intensity. It was just absolutely amazing. But one thing that really stood out to me, this guy is nearly 70. He's nearly 70. His interaction with the audience was incredible. But his passion. You've got 20,000 people. It's a big event. But everybody could sense his passion. So he would play throughout songs on his keyboard and guitar. But when he wasn't involved, he wouldn't walk off stage, have a break, have a drink or whatever. He would get involved. He would kind of motivate or egg on the others that were playing the instruments. For example, there was one section where drummer was doing an incredible part, and he was in front of the drums, really trying to encourage her to go. And he almost reminded me of the Phantom of the Opera. Just that enthusiasm, that passion, that intensity for the music. And I just thought, how cool is it to see someone that obviously has had a successful career, obviously done well for himself. He's been doing this for a long time. But in my opinion, his passion was still just as strong. It was absolutely incredible. And it was a real eye-opener that if there's something you love doing, even if it's just a hobby, keep the passion there. And, find ways to keep that passion alive. And of course, he's won many awards. He's won 2 Oscars. But the thing that stood out to me, it was the music, but it was just him and how much he loved what he was doing. And when people have asked me, what was it like? What was the concert like? It was like no other. It didn't feel like you were watching just somebody perform some music. This sounds really cheesy and really corny, but it was like a journey. Absolutely incredible. But he was such a great example of just keeping that passion, that energy going for things that you love doing. And you could sense it in his words, in his interaction with the crowds, in everything that he was doing. You could sense that he just absolutely loved it. And he had the audience in the palm of his hand. He was cracking jokes. Everyone was having a great time. But you would go from laughing, and then people in the audience would be in tears at this beautiful cello piece. And then people are dancing to Lion King. And I think anyone that within a 3-hour performance can take you through that many emotions, can take 20,000 people through that many emotions, is incredible. So yeah, thank you, Hans Zimmer. And if you ever get a chance to see him live, I highly recommend it. And a little tip that I wrote down in my notes. If you are going to the O2 and you are driving and you spent a lot of money on your tickets anyway, there is something you can do to not have to park miles away, because the parking at the O2 is a little bit annoying. It's quite far away and you've got to walk to the O2. And if it's raining, this is rubbish. You and who you're going with. You're all dressed up, all looking great, and then you get soaked on the way in because England, thanks a lot, the weather's rubbish. So it's chucking it down. You're walking in, it kind of ruins the mood a little bit. Your outfits get all wet. It's not what we want. If you're feeling a bit fancy, you can book VIP parking. Just got to do it in advance. And basically, I think it's like £35 for the night. And it means that you park right underneath the O2. It's valet parking. So you drop your car off, they park it off for you, and you go and walk in. And then when you finish, you hand them your ticket. They bring your car to you. Now, £35 might seem like a lot of money, but the actual parking's £20 or £25. So there's only £10 extra. It might be £37.50 actually, thinking about it. If you're happy to spend that, highly recommend it. It just makes for an occasion. And if you spend a lot of money on tickets anyway, which unfortunately things are these days, aren't they? Everything's expensive. I highly recommend it, Go and treat yourself to valet parking if you can. But yeah, one good thing as well about the O2 is you can get the cable car across the Thames. If you've got children and you want to do something fun in London and the weather's nice, just do it. It's really good fun. I say the kids will love it. I like doing it, and my wife knows that we're going to get the cable car across when we go to that part of London. Very good. Something else we're going to talk about is this week actually we had a storm pass through England and the United Kingdom, and it's got a name. It was Storm Bram. Okay, and it got me thinking: when, where, and why did we start naming storms in England? So I did a bit of research into it, and it's quite interesting. So the Met Office, which basically the weather people, began naming storms in 2015. And the idea of this was to improve public awareness for severe weather impacts. It's a bit like if you live in certain climates, they name tropical cyclones or tropical storms or things that could cause damage. Perhaps you've experienced this. When I was living in Dominican Republic, you would always hear of hurricane so-and-so that's passing through. And I never really thought, why do we name them? But basically, the idea behind it is it makes warnings easier to communicate, to get ready for emergency planning, and for media to get across the necessary safety information. Naming storms just makes that process easier. So initially, UK and Ireland did this, but then they expanded in 2019 to include the Royal Netherlands Meteorological Institute. So these are the guys that coordinate the storm names basically for the northwest of Europe. But how on earth do they name a storm? Do you just pick names out of a hat? How does it happen? Well, interestingly, a storm gets a name when it is forecast or they predict that it's going to cause medium or high impact. So, for example, especially strong winds, based on weather warnings, these will be classed as an orange or a red alert. So you've got wind, you've got other hazards such as rain and snow, and all of these things, they are considered. But basically that's when they decide that, okay, this storm's got to be named based on its severity and the fact that it could cause damage or that the public needs to be aware. So they name these storms just to make it easier to communicate, easier to track, and I guess if you want to look it up on the news, you know exactly what storm it is and how to follow it. But where do they get the names from? Well, apparently it's just alphabetical lists. So each autumn, starting September the 1st, a new alphabetical list of storm names is announced for this coming season, and that runs until the end of August the next year. But this isn't just A to Z. Letters Q, U, X, Y, and Z are omitted. They're not included. And this follows conventions similar to other naming schemes, because suitable names are harder to find and rarely used. So Q, U, X, Y, and Z omitted. Not using them. Every other letter is fair game. And most names, apparently, are drawn from public submissions. Thousands are suggested each year, often inspired by loved ones, pets, cultural figures, meaningful names, whatever. I don't know if I'd want to name a storm that could cause damage after a loved one. But in 2015, the UK Met Office, they began naming storms to increase public preparedness. And in 2019, Netherlands joined. So, this list continues to be published annually. For example, 2023-2024 year, the storms reached as far as Lilian, so A to L. We had that many storms within that period. From A to L, that's how many storms we had. We had a storm for A, B, C, D, E, all the way to Lilian. And that's the furthest alphabetical position yet for this group. In 2024-2025 season, we had names like Ashley, Bert, Connell, Dorag, Ewan. 2025-2026, we had the new list announced, starting with Amy, Bram, Chandra, Dave, Eddie, Isla, Ruby, Stevie, others. So the most recent storms we had here. In January 2025, we had Storm Ewan. Now, if you've been living in the UK, you'll be familiar with this one. Storm Ewan in January 2025 brought powerful winds across Ireland, Isle of Man, the UK, and it was the 5th storm named. Unfortunately, there were quite a few fatalities, injuries and things. Then in August, we had Storm Floris. Brought winds of over 100 miles per hour to Scotland. And then here in early December, we had Storm Bram. And this is the most recent storm that we had this week. Heavy rain, flooding, transportation across London and everything was disrupted, strong winds, but that was Storm Bram. So it's interesting, isn't it? It just made me think that all these procedures, all these things that we have in place have been organised, have been prepared, have been planned. We don't even think about it. Storm Bram was on the news this week, and it was only whilst I was thinking of things to prepare for the podcast, I thought, why on earth did they call it Storm Bram? Where did it get its name from? So there you go. But saying that, it could pass. It wasn't too bad at all. And today is a lovely day here in the southeast of England. Just looking out my window now, it's very cold, but when it's that beautiful blue sky, just perfect. There you go. So that was really all we had to talk about on this week's episode, this December natter. Let's go through some comprehension questions. So we started off talking about what the O2. So here's the first question. What was the O2 originally called, and why was it built in the year 2000? Okay. What was the O2 originally called, and why was it built in the year 2000? I'll give you a moment just to think about it. Maybe give you 5 seconds. Got an answer? Well, it was originally called the Millennium Dome. The Millennium Dome, and it was built to celebrate the new millennium in the year 2000. So if you got that, really well done. And if you didn't get it, don't worry about it. I'm going to try and do this more and more in episodes just to see how much you get right. So let me know with these how many you got right, if you like this portion of the podcast, and if you want me to keep doing it. What type of music does Hans Zimmer write, and what makes his musical style unusual? So what type of music does Hans Zimmer write, and what makes his musical style unusual? And there's no one answer to this one. Just getting the general idea of it is good enough. So Hans Zimmer writes music for films, known as film scores, and his style is unusual because he mixes the orchestral music with electronic sounds. And that's what creates that powerful and atmospheric tone to films. And if you watch films like Interstellar and Inception, you'll know exactly the sound we're talking about. So he writes film scores and he mixes orchestral music with electric sounds. What film gave Hans Zimmer his major breakthrough, and what did it earn him? Okay. What film gave Hans Zimmer his major breakthrough, and what did it earn him? Hans Zimmer's major breakthrough came with the first Rain Man film in 1988. So it was Rain Man. That was his first breakthrough. The film that I think has Tom Cruise and Robert De Niro in it. I might be wrong. And this earned him his first Oscar nomination. Little tricky bit there. If you said Oscar, you get half a point, but it was actually just an Oscar nomination. Fourth question. When did the UK Met Office start naming storms? And when did this system begin? So when did the UK Met Office start naming storms? And when... what? Ignore that question. Ignore it. I read it wrong. Why did they start naming storms? And when did this system begin? Why and when? Storm Bram, eh? So they started naming storms in 2015 to improve public awareness of severe weather, and it made things easier to communicate. So 2015 to improve awareness and communication. And finally, my notes have gone crazy. Where's the question gone? Bear with me a second. I've got the answer, but I've lost the question in my notes. Well, that's rubbish. Okay, I'm going to just make up a question for this one. What storm affected the UK in January 2025? That's a really difficult question. If you get this one, hats off to you. Gold star. Which storm affected the UK in January 2025? It was Storm Ewan. Difficult spelling of that. Storm Ewan. There you go. If you liked that, if you enjoyed those comprehension questions, let me know and I'll keep doing it every single episode. So at the end of each episode, we'll have some comprehension questions just for you to gauge how many you get right. But I don't want you coming away from that feeling rubbish about yourself, if you didn't get them all right. The biggest thing is that you enjoyed listening. That's the most important part. I don't want this podcast to become about answering 5 questions at the end. I don't want that. I don't want you to feel stressed. I just want you to relax and enjoy the English language. So if you're stressing about it, don't do it. I won't do it again. That is not what I want. If you do enjoy just that little test, that little gauge of how much you understood, then yeah, brilliant. Very good. So yeah, thank you for your support recently with the podcast. Thank you for watching as always and listening. I do appreciate it. I hope you've had a good week. Yeah, it's difficult as we get to this time of year, and just routines go out the window, and it's just life. So I was just thinking, if you are studying English and throughout this time of year you're just not doing as much, don't worry about it. Don't beat yourself up. Just enjoy things like this, the podcast, watching films, TV series in English, but don't be too hard on yourself. If your learning of English or whatever is going out the window a little bit, start in January. But give yourself a little bit of a break this time of year, because it can easily get too much, can't it? I'm preparing an episode at the moment on how to learn English in 2026, and we're mixing it up a little bit. Okay, so I'm preparing that at the moment, but I'm going to just go through some suggestions on how to perhaps change your approach to learning English in 2026, particularly considering the fact that life only gets busier, doesn't it? We seem to have less and less time for ourselves and what we like to do, but that doesn't mean we have to stop learning, stop studying, and stop improving. Thank you so much as always. You're amazing. Please do say hello in the comments. Please do introduce yourself, and if you feel like I'm sick of your comments, I'm not. I love hearing from you, and actually with quite a few of you now, I feel like I've got to know each other a little bit through the comments. I always try and respond, and I see a lot of the same names, which is so nice. Just that community spirit around the GSL English podcast makes me very happy. So yeah, very good. Have a great day. Have a great Sunday. Have a great week ahead. I hope you achieve everything that you want to, and I'll see you next week. Have a good one, guys.